Another question that came up in class, and we'll start with Joe again. The students wanted to hear about your thoughts, this is assuming they reach that entrepreneurial level and do have their own businesses, and like you folks have had to grow a business. What are the kinds of things that you look for in your employees? I've heard the word passion. What kind of behaviors seem to be important to you? Obviously, we recognize the need for technical skills. But I'm kind of curious, if someone came in and said, gee, I'd like to be your next vice president, Joe, what are the kinds of things that you absolutely have to see in this person?
So it's a great question, and as a business owner, it's the most important thing you'll do, is to hire people. And it's one of the hardest things to do, and you'll know it if you sit with somebody. Some of this is about if you go on interviews yourself. I encourage you to go on lots of interviews, because just by the nature of doing that, you will learn that there are people who are very good interviewers, and there are people who are terrible interviewers. And then every once in a while, you'll come across somebody who is a master interviewer and who will just peel you like an onion. And there will be your soul laying on the table for them to examine. And that's really what you want. And that's a very hard thing to do. So I will tell you that particularly as the organization got larger and you're interviewing for ever more senior jobs, by the time I would interview somebody, the skill thing wasn't an issue. Somebody else had already filtered out that you had either the right skills or the right credentials. And so my job really was to peer into somebody's soul and what's the fit. And I will tell you that the single most important thing to try to get from people is that they're passionate about what you want them to do. And integrity is critical. There is nothing worse that you can do for the organization. I haven't done this much, but every once in a while somebody sneaks in. And the worst possible person is somebody who will kiss up and kick down. And they're not apparent right away, but they're poisonous and they are destructive. And so if you get to a place that you're hiring, it's those sorts of behaviors that are the critical things to talk about. And the questions you're asking to get to those kinds of things have nothing to do with technical competence. It has everything to do to try to get the person to talk about their value set, to talk about what turns them on. What's important to you? What makes you cry? What makes you laugh? I mean, there's a laundry list of, we won't go into all the interview questions, but to really try to get somebody to talk about who they are. And you have to sit back critically and say, is this a fit for the organization? Is this going to work inside of my business? And we've also heard here, you can't just have the same one kind of person. If everybody in your organization is uniform, that's not going to work. You really do need a level of diversity in terms of outlooks and points of view, but you really can't have diversity in terms of core values as they're going to sit inside of your business. People have to really match up that way. And it's a tricky thing, and I think that there's no book you can read that will help you to do that, and it comes really from experience. And I will tell you that the best way, I think, for a younger person to start to get a feel for that is to go on lots of interviews. And as you're being interviewed, think about how good a job is the interviewer doing with me. Right at the end of the interview, did they know you? Did they not know you? Did they challenge you? Did they get you to open up about something maybe you weren't quite prepared to open up to a stranger to, right? An interview is kind of an odd interaction between people. So it's a very important thing, and one that you should never give short shrift to. If you're feeling rushed or harried or you've only got 20 minutes, reschedule it, because it's a really important dialogue between you and somebody who's going to come work for you. And it's critical at all things. In a small company, every employee matters. And in a really large company, put a wrong leader in charge of a group or division, and you've just ruined the lives of 100 people, right? Not just the one person. You can really negatively impact a lot of folks in your organization by putting the wrong leader in place. So whether it's a little business, whether it's a big business, the hiring one is the one that always would give me the most pause, because there are some businesses or some decisions as we've heard, that you can move quickly through because if you get it half right, it's okay. The people decision really isn't one. You know, if you make a mistake with that, then it's expensive in one fashion or another.
When you do interview someone, do you have a specific block of time set aside for someone, or?
Absolutely.
Do you
And
figure
it's always
15
long.
minutes?
I mean, like, I interviewed, the last senior position I hired was the CFO. The first Saturday, we sat in my office for 4.5 hours.
Really?
The second Saturday, we sat there for 2 hours, and then I think I had him come back a third time. I mean, we really spent a lot of time together. So, because the amount of time you're going to invest relative to the importance of the position, you know, if I put the wrong person in that job, you know, it has mammoth impact to the company. So you have to take the time. You know, now I wouldn't spend 4.5 hours if I was hiring a stock selector in the warehouse, but at the same time, I still don't want to put somebody in who doesn't have values, whose integrity doesn't match the company, who's, you know, who wasn't going to be, you know, all that stuff is still important.
My own curiosity, this is not a student room question.
Yeah.
Have you ever hired the wrong person for a job?
I have.
How bad was it?
Bad. It was bad, really bad. I mean, I've done them a couple, you know, you try to avoid it. I've done it a couple of times, and convinced at the time that made a good choice. But what happens is there are people who are good at hiding their true nature, but eventually, right, the facade will crumble. And, you know, the trick is what I always want to do is I always wanted to take an interviewer and make them work for 2 days straight. Because 4 o'clock in the morning on fast food, when you haven't had enough sleep, people's true character really comes out. And if I could figure out how to put people in that kind of a very pressure situation, it would have been great, but I haven't figured out how to do that in an interview yet.
Nobody has.